Nutrition education principles. Current eating patterns are associated with 4 of the 10 leading causes of death in the United States: coronary heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and some types of cancer. The U.S. is also experiencing high rates of overweight and obesity, along with low levels of physical activity. Craving for information. We're constantly bombarded with food and nutrition information from a variety of sources such as the internet, TV, books, talk shows. And nutrition information and recommendations change based on research and policy. This is important to know. For example, the dietary guidelines are updated every 5 years based on latest information. The public's craving for the latest diet, anti-aging supplement, and alternative therapies make them vulnerable to misinformation and outright fraud. However, this craving also presents an excellent opportunity to educate the public on a variety of food, health, and nutrition topics. What is nutrition education? Nutrition education is an important public health strategy to prevent and treat diseases, improve health outcomes, decrease healthcare costs. It also involves communication of food and nutrition information through a variety of channels. However, it is what and how information is communicated that makes the difference as to whether it will be effective in motivating and facilitating changes in eating habits and food intake. Nutrition education is the process of helping individuals and families and communities to acquire knowledge, skills, and motivation, make appropriate food choices throughout life, and discriminate between credible and non-credible sources of information. Nutrition education is also an interactive process where both the target audience and the educator share active roles. However, providing the correct information is not sufficient to improve eating habits. Successful nutrition education goes beyond the simple accumulation of knowledge and towards positive action. Effective nutrition education programs must therefore be planned and delivered in such a way as to motivate individuals to develop skills and confidence for the adoption of positive and lasting practices. Goals of nutrition education. 1. To influence individuals, families, and communities to change their dietary intake, eating habits, environmental factors, or public policy to positively influence health. To increase awareness of the link between eating habits and health outcomes. To motivate individuals to adopt healthy eating habits. To increase knowledge about the nutritional value of specific foods, where to obtain credible nutrition information, and how to read a food label, etc. So let's look at a few examples of nutrition education goals. 1. To increase calcium intake. 2. Buy healthy foods that fit within a limited budget. And 3. Decrease vending machines in school. So nutrition education must be practical. So let's look now at the practicality of nutrition education. The goals that were just discussed may initially sound simple, but may be difficult to achieve. Eating habits are influenced by long-standing internal and external factors. For long-term changes to occur, the recommendation should be realistic and the recommended foods must be available and acceptable according to cultural customs and attitudes. Nutrition education must be realistic, practical, and personally and culturally relevant. The desired outcome also must be measurable and give the client immediate or long-term satisfaction. Effective nutrition education is consumer-focused, and the information must always be presented with sufficient context to allow consumers to weigh the information and determine if it fits their needs. Who provides nutrition education? That is a big question. Nutrition education combines the knowledge and application of food and nutrition science with health education and communication principles to meet the needs of the target group. Thus, the registered dietitian nutritionist, RDN, who is credentialed nationally by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, is the most qualified person to provide nutrition education. You will also note that in some states, the requirement also is to be licensed. So a licensed dietitian nutritionist, who also, more than likely, is also a registered dietitian nutritionist. Again, the licensure takes place at the state level, and the registration takes place at the national level. So you take the national exam, you become a registered dietitian, and then you apply for licensure at your local level at the state. In addition to having a core knowledge of food and nutrition science, dietitians also are trained in communication skills, behavior change techniques, principles of adult learners, health education theory, and developing, implementing, and evaluating health messages. I want to emphasize that it is important that all healthcare providers should have a basic knowledge of nutrition. In fact, one or more nutrition courses are required by some nursing and health education programs. In some communities, lay health advisors, also sometimes called community health workers, deliver basic nutrition education. And other professionals, such as certified health education specialists, CHAS, may also provide basic nutrition education. This trend will increase as healthcare costs continue to rise and more emphasis is placed on preventing diseases as well as self-care. However, whenever possible, a registered dietitian nutritionist should be part of the healthcare team and be referred to as much as possible. Traditional assumptions of nutrition education. One assumption is that knowing the consequences of an unhealthy diet should be a sufficient motivator to change. We know that's not true, because most individuals are aware of the areas of their diet that need improvement. Okay? So information alone is not enough, because most people do have basic information. However, only a small number adopt a healthy diet to reduce their risk for chronic diseases. Most people really don't change their eating habits until they have a health threat or they're diagnosed with a health problem. Another assumption is that informed individuals will eat healthy if they can afford healthy foods. Well, poor eating habits exist actually among all income levels. Rich people also have poor eating habits. The issue has really to do with the ability to choose. With the right information, low-income people can eat healthy diets on a low budget and make wise decisions. We can make wise decisions even on a low budget. Another assumption, and this is a real challenge, is that providing written nutrition education material is the best way to educate individuals. Well, what we know is that nutrition education materials are often written at a high literacy level using very technical terms. There are also different learning styles. Thus, a variety of channels should be used for nutrition education, especially now with the amount of technology that we have. We have to consider using social media, providing information on the internet, texting nutrition education materials, using blogs, and using videos. Rise to the challenge.